Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Today, I am accompanied by Ben. He is a fellow accomplished health and fitness coach. I'm going to have him introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about him and kind of why you do what you do. What are you passionate about?
Sure. Krista, well, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Ben Brown. We have a company called BSL Nutrition, and we're actually in the process of rebranding to Body Systems.
Mhm.
Um, and we have an online health and fitness and nutrition coaching business. We primarily serve mothers and fathers looking to build a better body and create the energy to show up for their family. And we have a systematic process that we leverage. It's a four-phase strategic process called our Pure Science Proven Results process to help them walk through that journey from getting started to leaving with the tools, skills, and behaviors that are going to help them continue to reinforce those goals in
Yeah.
perpetuity. And so that's what we do. I have two master's degrees, one in exercise physiology from Arizona State, and the other one is in clinical nutrition from the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. And so have been doing this for close to 20 years now.
Yeah.
I've been in the field, so I've been doing this a long time, and I've learned a lot of hard lessons along the way, which I'm excited to share what works well for us
Yeah.
in our business right now, and again, hopefully provide as much value for your listeners as possible. And I also can speak intelligibly to this area because I've experienced all of this stuff myself as a business owner, as a
Yeah.
husband, as a father of three, and our kids. We have
Hmm.
two girls; they're 13 and 11, and an 8-year-old boy. I get all of the nuances that
Yeah.
come with trying to prioritize yourself, your health, your fitness, weight
Hmm.
loss, and even just health related concerns. Having been someone who struggled with digestive disorders growing up, which was ultimately what
Hmm.
propelled me into this field. And so, again, thank you
Yeah.
for having me and excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. I found one of your podcasts and it connected me to you instantly because you were talking just about that, about how, you help mostly mothers and fathers learn the habits, to live a long life of a healthy lifestyle. And myself being a nurse, being a health coach, I often see people not in their best situations working in the ER, suffering from things like heart attack, strokes,
Right.
things, consequences of an unhealthy lifestyle. And so when I saw that that's who you mainly work with, it immediately drew me to you. And I love that you have an also like a well-balanced approach. Your focus is lifelong health and fitness, not just for 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is. Um, Today, I really wanted to talk about strength training in general. A lot of people think strength training is just for aesthetic purposes, to get ripped or look shredded, but there's so many other benefits to strength training that I think a lot of people overlook and oftentimes find it maybe hard to be consistent because they're not seeing the results maybe they
Mm.
want to see immediately. Do you have any insight around that?
Yeah, help contextualize this a little bit for me in terms of what the typical conversations are with your clientele and perhaps some of the resistance. So
Mhm.
so what are people looking to accomplish and what's some of the resistance that you consistently hear?
So I would say most people are looking to accomplish some sort of weight loss, toning up, gaining strength. But oftentimes the resistance, specifically with mothers and fathers who also work and have busy lives, is time. Time, I
Right.
would say, is the biggest reason why people are saying they can't be consistent.
Right. Yeah. And so this is where, when we look at strength training and exercise in general, I think it's really important to understand that we very clearly understand the value of exercise as a
Yeah.
health driver, right?
Hmm.
Is whether it's cardiovascular exercise and or strength training, is there's a number of fundamental benefits to it. Improved metabolic health, improved lean
Yeah.
muscle tissue, improved blood sugar regulation, improved just cognitive and emotional well-being
Yeah.
from just being more physically active. The list goes on, and we can absolutely make the correlation between improved physical activity, again, whether it's cardiovascular exercise
Hmm.
and strength training, and improved
Yeah.
longevity, right? one of the problems that we experience is, especially when we're talking to a quote unquote busy population, mothers and fathers, people who have a hard time prioritizing their time, to be fair. It's like, I would argue that we all have the time. It's really just a prioritization issue, right?
100%.
But with that said, is saying, okay, well, we understand in the weight loss arena is oftentimes our focus comes down to how do I burn the most amount of calories possible, or
Exactly.
how do we reduce our calories to the degree that we're losing weight. And so intuitively, and also substantiated by social media and just
Yes.
media in general, and so much of the fad-based literature out there, all of it's relegated to how do we create the biggest calorie discrepancy possible, right? Weight loss comes down to just creating an energy deficit. Legitimately, it does. In which case, how do we eat, right, as little as possible, and perhaps exercise as much as possible in a way to quote unquote burn calories? And this
and often
is
looking for the fastest
in the
results too.
fastest way possible.
Yes.
And this is fundamentally a flawed mindset and belief system around weight loss in general. And so for those of you listening, it's so imperative that we remove ourselves from this paradigm, right? From the idea of it's simply about eating less and burning more, and instead really looking at metabolic health and sort of shifting the narrative to how do we lose as much fat mass as possible while supporting as much lean muscle tissue as possible? Because one of the biggest problems that we experience in this quote unquote, weight loss arena, right, is that it's not difficult to lose weight. Krista, you see this all of the time. In fact, how prevalent are weight loss drugs now when we talk about GLP-1 agonists, you know, the Ozempics and the Mounjaros and all of these weight loss drugs, right? Well, and diabetes drugs. Well, it's not that the weight loss is difficult, but what we need to understand is the body composition changes that are happening. So to put this differently, is people are losing weight, which is great, right? This is healthy for us to go from obese to overweight to normalized weight. But within that is what we're seeing is a massive reduction in lean muscle mass through this process, right? And this is very, very damaging to our metabolism, to put it lightly, in terms of our ability to expend calories, to burn body fat, to produce energy, to regulate energy and mitochondrial function. And so this is part of the reason why strength training is so imperative when you're on a weight loss journey, is one, because it, like we said, it's very, very beneficial for you. It's healthy. It helps with blood sugar regulation. The more muscle mass we have to a certain point, the more calories we expend at rest. Obviously, just from an aesthetic standpoint of having lean muscle mass helps you look better, regardless of what your weight is, right? Has you have more definition and muscle tone, physically feeling more strong and capable, to say nothing of all the hormonal implications that come from having muscle mass. But beyond that is understanding that as we lose weight, if we're not taking active steps, specifically strength training or resistance training or methods to help us preserve lean muscle tissue, then we're going to be losing muscle mass through that process. Anytime we're in a calorie deficit, and especially aggressive calorie deficit. And that's a lot of what we're seeing right now with, as an extreme example, is with these weight loss drugs and people that undergo a significant amount of weight loss, is they're losing 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 pounds, but upwards of 50% of that is lean muscle mass. Right. And so if we can put that into perspective and say, well, gosh, that's really, really valuable and hard-earned tissue that we probably won't get back unless we're taking concerted efforts, making concerted efforts. And to make things worse is for people that end up regaining that weight. Imagine losing 30 pounds of weight of which it's not unreasonable to have 15 pounds of that to be lean muscle
Muscle.
mass, right? Especially if they're not strength training and they're just doing more of
Right.
a extreme diet, if you will, and maybe more intense cardio, right?
Right.
And then you gain that weight back, which also is
hmm
not uncommon.
But
Well,
it's
you've
not going
just
to be
gained,
muscle.
you're not gaining back that muscle mass. You've
Right.
lost that muscle mass and you're gaining back more fat mass, which puts you at a more metabolically disadvantageous
100%.
position. Lowered resting metabolic rate,
Yep.
lower energy expenditure, lower thermic effect of food. The
hmm
list, that's the main, in this context, that's the main reason why strength training becomes so pivotal through this process.
Yeah. And and I want to elaborate on that because the typical population that goes to extreme measures are already coming from maybe a not so healthy mindset around health and fitness. So maybe they're typically not somebody who works out anyway. And so someone who would go to extreme measures like that, I think it would be safe to say they're already starting behind the eight ball because they don't have, the healthy amount of muscle mass to start with.
Yeah,
So then you're already starting kind of behind the eight ball. Then you lose additional muscle mass. And a lot of these extreme diets are not sustainable long term. And so, it's only putting you further and further behind. And so people often get excited when they see the weight come off initially, but aren't looking further on down the line. So I'm really glad that you brought up that point. When you gain the weight back, most of the people do when they go to some sort of extreme measures, it's not just the same weight you lost. You're almost in a worse place that you were before you
100%.
even started.
Yeah, 100%. And so if we could simply shift the paradigm or the belief system around
Yeah.
this weight loss process, we'd be in a much better position as a society. And
Yeah.
and you hit the nail on the head with, in saying most people are not coming into this dieting process from an advantageous position, but they've been
Right.
yo-yo dieting for
Yeah.
years as it is, and or they were never very physically active to begin with. And we're seeing
Yeah.
this a lot more now, so in our youth, to the degree that, for you or I, in the literature, oftentimes it's spoken around after the age of 30, we lose a certain amount of muscle mass
Right.
per year, every single year, to the tune of 3 to 8% per decade as we age, right? So we're losing bone mass, we're losing muscle mass. Usually our weight stays the same, if not increases. So we're actually
hmm
slowly and progressively putting on more fat mass,
Yep.
which is not a good thing, right?
hmm
But even more so now is kids are just not physically active to begin with,
Adults
right?
aren't
And
either.
so they never have much muscle mass to begin
Yeah.
with. And in which case, well, now we're in an even worse position.
And this is why like I'm so passionate about finding other people like yourself who are, working with people, specifically mothers and fathers, to help them learn those long-term habits, because that's exactly what I do for my clients too. 90% of my clients are mothers or young moms, or maybe they're pregnant. And so the habits and the routines that we're teaching them don't only benefit themselves, it also benefits their children and their families, because healthy and active parents often make healthy and active children.
Yes.
And, all of us are working remotely, working from home more. We're sitting more. We have longer commutes. We have sedentary lifestyles. We're not hunters and gatherers like we once were. So, we have to work even harder to even maintain this normal baseline, whatever normal means. But the same thing with the children, they're not as active. We have video games now and everybody's playing on their phones, and, no one's going outside and playing anymore.
Yeah, no, totally. And, at the end of the day, it's it's really about leveraging more opportunities to move our body in
hmm
meaningful ways, is so much of what constitutes a healthy lifestyle now,
hmm
and longevity, plain and
Yeah.
simple. And, you know, it's so seemingly simple yet complex at the same time in terms of how
Yeah.
our metabolism functions. But it's really interesting, Krista, because we have more and more literature now talking about the benefits of just being physically active, especially as it pertains to blood sugar regulation. And we
Yeah.
look at disease in general, especially as we age, and metabolic dysfunction and dysregulation, if you will. We have blood pressure dysregulation, lipid dysfunction. We have obviously blood sugar dysregulation, and all of this metabolic decline can largely be remedied by simply creating more opportunities in our day-to-day to move our body more frequently, irrespective of the foods that we consume. Obviously, that is a huge, huge avenue there to make improvements. But again, coming back to the initial points of the conversation, is like, this is not just about calories in, calories out. This ultimately is about building the most robust metabolic machinery possible, so that we can be able to eat whatever we want within reason, have the most flexibility and freedom to be able to manage our blood sugar even when situations aren't ideal, be able to, again, move in meaningful ways, whether that's more intense physical activity or just long bouts of low intensity physical activity. And so that's really what we want to equip our clientele with, and these listeners, your listeners with, is just simply understanding, like, this is not this complex equation of, if I just do 3 days a week of 45 minutes of strength training, and if I just eat 1,500 calories and mind my macros, then I'll accomplish my goals. Rather, it's simply saying, how can I start to infuse the physical activity behaviors, the structured strength training behaviors, and the nutrition behaviors in ways that I enjoy, that fit within my lifestyle, that give me the power and autonomy to take ownership and responsibility over my decisions, both around nutrition and exercise. And how do I, strategically infuse those in a way where it becomes part of who I am, right? So that I can set a great example for my kids, so that I can make long-term progress non-negotiable, and ultimately, so I can live the life that I want to live without worrying about being relegated to weight loss pills and bars and shakes and all of this other nonsense that's keeping us handcuffed.
Yeah. And I love that too. And do you find when you're working with your clients as well, you're almost, having to undo all of the, what is the right word that I want to use for this? All of the negative thoughts and things that we learned growing up, like our clients are also having to undo all of those things, like, out of the low fat or fat free lifestyle or everything diet, we're having to unlearn those habits in addition to learning healthy habits.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what we try and incorporate with clientele is ultimately just, one, creating autonomy. Like I said, is understanding that you are the owner of your choices, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what not to do. But what I am going to do is I'm going to equip you with the knowledge and the tools and the skills to be able to make the best decisions possible in whatever environment that you're in. I think that's a level of freedom that we absolutely need to have as a responsible adult, right? Because we know from a behavioral psychology standpoint, the second, Krista, that I tell you not to do something, human nature is to basically go directly against that, that narrative. And so instead is not necessarily undoing, but simply giving permission to do the things that you want to do, but understanding the repercussions of those decisions. And so ultimately what we talk about with our clients is helping them become their own best nutrition detective, right? This takes time and practice to develop the skills to know how to select foods and exercise and routines and implement behaviors and structure and strategy in meaningful ways, just like it takes time to learn anything that's worthwhile, to develop any type of skill, like learning an instrument or a new language or whatever, which is why it's a beautiful opportunity for someone to actually embrace that level of awareness and the learning curve that comes from this, as well as to have an expert as someone who can guide them, like you or me, to say, listen, you're going to make mistakes. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. We need to
Yes.
make mistakes so that you can learn. That's how humans learn, right? But let's help at least guide you in the right direction. Let's make sure
Yes.
that in terms of the roadmap, we're at least moving in the right direction. Or in other words, like we're all climbing the mountain, but there's a lot of different ways to summit,
Yes.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you have a Sherpa, uh, working with you, helping guide you, even when things get tough, the
Mm-hmm.
snowstorms or the blizzards or the avalanches that invariably
Yeah.
fall in our path, we still are developing and navigating around and over those things in a helpful way.
Yeah. So that way you know what to do the next time that situation arises. Or maybe it'll make you think a second time, like, I remember what happened last time. Let's try something
Totally.
else. And
Totally.
arguably, this is a harder way of doing it because it's not a black and white situation. It's not a quick fad diet. We're not giving you a list of 30 foods that you can only eat or not eat. We're saying, you can't have the donut, you can't have the wine, but just know what will happen or how you'll feel. And maybe that's not the choice for you today, or maybe it is the choice for you today, you know?
It feels harder initially because our logical brain says, just tell me what to do.
Or
And
good
our
or bad.
correct. And that's dichotomous approach of all or nothing, good or bad, black or
Yeah.
white, clean and dirty foods. And so logically, at least conventional wisdom would suggest, well, just tell me what to do, at least the way that
Hmm.
we've been told. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. As I suggested, is that's not how the human brain works. That's not
Right.
how we learn. And so while it might feel more challenging initially because you're forced to actually make decisions, to
Hmm.
actually create awareness around your behaviors, um, to actually reflect on the decisions that you made and determine how positive or negative it actually was for you. It takes
Hmm.
work, right?
Yeah.
And we want the simple path. It's totally reasonable, but
Yep.
in the long term, it actually makes the process a hell of a lot easier. It actually equips us with the confidence and the clarity and the wisdom, and of course, again, the skills to be able to make those educated decisions so that we're not relegated with, well, crap, I don't know what to do. It wasn't on the meal plan
Yeah.
and screw it. I'll just eat whatever I want and I'll go back to
Exactly.
the meal plan on Monday because I
Uh-huh.
don't know how to make decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a trap everybody falls into with the fad diet. I just did a little post about that. Same thing, unless you plan on never getting busy or never having a vacation or a birthday party or life, it will inevitably, life will get in the way. Something will mess up your perfect meal plan, and then you're not going to know what to do if we haven't taught you any of these things.
Yeah. So one of the ways that we frame this with clients is really we look at this as a what we call a nutrition seasons approach, and understanding the seasonality of how life works because it really does revolve around seasons. And there's always, especially as parents, I think we could probably speak intelligibly to like, okay, well, here we are. It's the beginning of August, and for many of us with kids, we're kind of in this phase where summer's kind of been a shit show. And, many of the goals that we had set for ourselves sometimes get put to the
Pushed.
sidelines
Hmm.
by virtue of lack of routine and structure and consistency in the kids' schedule and travel
Yep.
and all of the things that are perfectly acceptable and warranted
Hmm.
given it's summer break, right?
And that's
But we've
life.
been eating more, we've been drinking more, and it's been harder to be as maybe quote unquote strict as we feel like we should have been. Okay, totally reasonable. Perhaps next summer, this is something that we should plan for as more of a
Yep.
maintenance phase to say, hey, why not eat more calories in line with our maintenance? We're not gaining or losing weight. We have more flexibility and freedom around what we can eat and
Yes.
drink as long as we're taking responsibility for it. And then understanding, okay, now we're going into, okay, kids are going back in school. For many of our
Hmm.
clients, this becomes a dieting phase. Saying we've got
Yes.
this beautiful time between August to November
For
where
the next holidays.
before the next holidays, you got that right,
Yep.
exactly when things get hairy again, to say, hey, what if we make this a strategic dieting phase? Saying, okay, we fully understand in order to lose weight, we need to create some level of caloric restriction. But wouldn't this feel like a much more reasonable time to create that routine and structure and be able to be more consistent with our training and with our
Hmm.
nutrition as it is during the summer, as it is during winter break, as it is during spring break, as it is
Yeah.
during, we work with a lot of financial advisors, as it is during tax season,
Yeah.
right? And so when we can kind of embrace the seasonality and zoom out and say, let's look at the
Hmm.
whole year instead of
Hmm.
just a 30-day block or a 60-day block and say,
Yeah.
I'm just going to white knuckle it and go hard and do whatever, 75
Hmm.
hard
Oh,
and
yes.
and be as aggressive as I can for a short period of time and then not really know what to do. What if we embrace the whole year strategically?
Hmm.
Not dissimilar to how we do with a business, not dissimilar to how we
Yeah.
do perhaps with our budget around our personal and business
Hmm.
finances, not dissimilar to how we do with our plan, our family planning, the kids' schedules.
Yeah.
And so instead saying, okay, here's our dieting phases, here's when we want to look the best, here's the times where we don't mind maybe putting on a few pounds, maybe focusing more on strength training and
Hmm.
eating more, maybe during the winter when people are a little more clothed. And we can kind of really dig into driving some more lean muscle mass
Hmm.
through strategic strength training and actually eating more food and
Yeah.
feeling really good and supporting the metabolism so that then we have the leverage to go into another dieting phase on the back end of that. And I think if more people, Krista, looked at the big picture, because we have clients that
100%.
work with us for years and years to
Same.
understand, hey, listen, sometimes the first 6 months or a year is simply just giving yourself permission
Yeah.
to really embrace this process and understand, like you said, that it's not
Yep.
about what we used to do, but instead, how am I progressively getting better through my
Hmm.
nutrition and training behaviors on a month by month, year by year basis to the degree that saying, hey, by the end of year one, like we look great, feel great, but even better is we're empowered with kind of the knowledge and confidence to know that by continuing to reinforce these behaviors in a strategic way based on planning and preparation and skill development and practice and trial and error, that by the end of year two, we're going to be even stronger, even
Hmm.
leaner, even more confident, right? We're eating more food,
Yeah.
more muscle definition. Like this is what we have the ability to do, but no one
Yeah.
talks about it because
Mm-mm.
obviously it takes time.
Yeah. And it's like we've come full circle because yes, it takes time. There's no quick fix to anything. And I love that you also reiterated that oftentimes the first 6 months to a year is really just getting your metabolism in a good spot because a lot of us are coming from a place of maybe, not so great metabolism, back to not getting the lean muscle mass, not having, fueling yourselves with enough calories and those type of things. And looking at it from a seasonal standpoint, I've never thought about it as seasons. Like I talk about the different areas of life and stuff, but I've never thought about the seasons like that. But it is the way that most coaches anyway will guide their clients. Who wants to be dieting over Thanksgiving and Christmas? Like it's not going to work. You can try to
No,
diet
it's
all you
not a
want,
good
but you're going to
idea.
be miserable.
Not a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, at the end of the day is your coach should be laying out realistic expectations for
Hmm.
you. And to be fair, Krista, like I don't think most coaches, I think all coaches have their clients' best interests in mind and obviously want to get their clients the best results. What I've observed over, close to 20 years of doing this is really acknowledging that this is a a process.
Hmm.
And the only way for people to be successful is by setting realistic expectations out of the gate and
Yeah.
helping clients understand that if they're not willing to invest in the long-term process, then it's unlikely. And when I say invest, I'm not just talking about financially investing, I'm talking about your time and your
Yeah.
energy. And those are the three most valuable assets that we have,
Hmm.
specifically our time and our energy, to be able to say, listen, how do we frame this in a way that's going to help you understand that you have to invest your time now to reap
Hmm.
the benefits down the road,
Yeah.
right? This is compounding interest at play. So anyone that plays the market, anyone that invests, which probably and hopefully is all of your listeners, right, is understanding that what we put in now compounds over time. And so we need to put in the time now so that we can make up time, money, energy, effort on the back end, right? Because what do they say? You're going to spend the money either way. You spend it now on your health, or you're going to spend it later on your health. And that's going to be damage control. And so that's especially imperative way of looking at the long-term process of setting realistic expectations for clients to say, listen, you're with me for a year, man. And it's probably going to be beyond that, but here's what we can accomplish within the first year realistically. And once we get you there, here's what I anticipate is going to happen. Having worked with enough people, is usually this is what the process looks like. Here's the usual fat loss. Here's the usual muscle gain. Here's the challenges that we're going to experience along the way based on what I understand of you and your lifestyle. I'm going to be very matter of fact with you about that. And I expect you to communicate very openly with me so that we can, again, sort of the climber and the Sherpa, we can navigate this summit together to the degree that we can make sure that you're developing the tools to be successful. And then when as it relates to kind of our original topic around strength training, I think it's so important that we look at strength training this way. It's saying it's a beautiful adjunct to the dieting process because one, it helps minimize the amount of lean muscle mass lost. It's going to improve your physique through the process. It's going to support your metabolism through the process, specifically with blood sugar regulation, energy production, mitochondrial function, brain health, cognitive function. And, you know, and then especially as we age and we do all of the things like consistent strength training that support lean muscle mass, is we know the correlation with muscle mass and strength and longevity to the degree that the stronger you are, the older you get, the longer you're likely to live. The more muscle mass you have within reason, right? The older you get, the longer you're likely to live, the better the quality of life, right? Anyone listening to this can think about their parents probably and their quality of life and sort of how their aging process has looked like, how complex life has become for them by virtue of their ability or lack of ability to do day-to-day efforts. And I know for us, like that's not what we want for ourselves, which means that process, if you haven't already started, it needs to start right now.
Absolutely. I cannot think of a better way to sum everything up. Thank you so much, Ben, for being here today. I think it's very clear that your knowledge and your skill and the experience that you've, dealt with your clients, you've helped a lot of people, and I'm sure you're going to continue to help a lot of people. Tell everybody where they can find you and learn more about your programs.
Yeah, most definitely. So our website is bslnutrition.com. BSL stands for Body Systems Labs. We did have a comprehensive all-in-one workout supplement. And it's a long story that I'll share on a different conversation, but we are rebranding to Body Systems, which was the name of my original company. Regardless, so you can find us on social at BSL Nutrition. And you can check out our podcast. It's called The Smart Nutrition Made Simple Show on all podcast platforms. Feel free to reach out. Let me know if you hopefully received value from this conversation.
Absolutely.
And otherwise, Chris, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful to have the opportunity to talk about this stuff. Obviously, I love it. And want to applaud you for the impact that you're making.
Thank you. And thank you very much. I'm sure everybody listening has gotten something. If not, they're fired up and motivated now, I hope. So yes, thank you again. And I will link all of your information below so people can find you as well. But thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Krista. Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.